This game is so intellectual. You will have to figure out what shape fits in what hole. Takes me back to some pretty interesting times in my life where I had to figure out where to put something, what hole to put it in. How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with the majestic host, the enlightened intellectual, the savior. Now, if you are new, do consider subscribing. It takes 2 seconds for you guys, but it means so much to me. I put everything that I am into my content, this community, this cult that we're building here, perhaps. No, we're not, but subscribe, okay? Because there's a lot going on here. If you like gaming content or intellectual philosophical content, you're in the right place. I try and do a balance of both. So if you enjoy that type of thing, make sure that you do subscribe. We're getting pretty close to 10k now, and it just means so much to me. And I love this community. Sound off in the comments below. And if you do want to support me, I would really appreciate it, because obviously this is not a massive channel as of yet, but we are getting close. So do support me by becoming a member to get extra content, or just drop a donation on PayPal. I am going to set up a Patreon soon, but yeah, just sound off in the comments. I really do appreciate it, and I love to have discussions with you guys. And yeah, we're going to make a great community together. And the weekly show is coming out very soon, where I do more interactions and we have a more back and forth. So if you like that type of thing, if you like the OG old school YouTube type stuff, then you're in the right place, because I feel like YouTube has just become so corporatized now, and I really want to correct that. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Talos Principle 2 review. This is my Talos Principle 2 game review, and I'm pretty excited about this. This is only based on the early game, what I've got my hands on so far, so do bear that in mind. And I'm going to avoid spoilers, because this game is all about the kind of story, okay? A lot of people say the Talos Principle is a puzzle game, and yes, it is mostly a puzzle game, but the puzzles aren't all that interesting, okay? They are fun, and they keep the story feeling fresh and it progresses. But puzzles for me, as a sole focused in a game, has always been a little bit of a mixed bag. Some games can pull it off, like this one or Portal, but to me you really need a mix of different gameplay mechanics to actually keep it interesting. Stuff like Star Wars Jedi Survivor does a great job of mixing combat, exploration, and puzzle solving. Of course, the puzzles here are way more intellectual and not for, baby boy toddlers, so they do actually require a lot more thought, and you will get stuck on them. But at the same time, just relying on puzzles as the gameplay mechanic, it does get a little bit old if you ask me. But if you absolutely love puzzle games, then look no further, because this is the best of the best when it comes to puzzle games.
I'm an android. I am an android. I am an android. I am Data. An android. I am only an android. I am an android. Android. Although I am an android, I am an android. I am an android. I am an android. I am an android. As an android.
I am an android. I'm an android.
You're an android, correct?
And the Talos Principle 1 was a massively overlooked game, if you ask me. It's very rare that we get games that actually deal with intellectual subject matter, philosophical ideas, and probes, the player to actually think about their own morality and questioning their own life and basically what they believe in. I think that's pretty rare. Alan Wake 2 has recently come out, and I know a lot of people are praising that game, but that's more of a psychological look at, a kind of breaking the fourth wall idea of, being self-aware that, the game is basically a game, and, you have all of these different narratives of, control and all that kind of stuff. The Talos Principle is far more immersive in the fact that it basically deals with identity and what it means to be human, what is basically consciousness at the end of the day. Can humans be replaced, and what happens in a society where humans have been replaced? Because the Talos Principle was all about, replicating humanity, and here in the Talos Principle 2, it's all about this new world, and it's very interesting, and it deals with a lot of complicated themes, and I'm going to break down some of them without going into spoilers, because I can't talk about that as of yet. But yeah, I do hope you enjoy this the Talos Principle 2 review, and we're going to talk about the positives and the negatives like I do with all of my reviews. That's just how I like to structure them. So I do hope you enjoy this. So what is the Talos Principle 2? Well, pretty much it is a puzzle game at the end of the day, but also a focused story narrative. Now these games are always kind of overlooked, overshadowed, which is a shame because some of them have really great insight. This is where you can find the intellectual stuff, and as a man who loves philosophy, I'm very into building up my own philosophy. If you want to follow my movement, the RUER, which is the Romanus United Empire Reborn, then make sure you do follow that playlist on my channel and you do subscribe, because I'm trying to bring back the kind of philosophical essence of the Roman Empire. If that sounds interesting to you, yeah, then do subscribe. But it is very rare to find games that actually deal with philosophical ideas. Some of them do a great job of it, like Lies of P. I did a full analysis on that. But this and other games like Soma, they always get overlooked because the gameplay is always not the most interesting, which is a shame, because actually narratively there's a lot more going on here compared to something that most gamers are interested in, and that's a shame. So it has been over 10 years pretty much since the first game, and even though it's not on the same scale as Portal, it does have a cult following, so I think a lot of people are looking forward to this game, but obviously it is still a minority. But if you are one of those people, rest assured that this is just bigger, grander, and it's more polished, where the dialogue and the writing in the first game was a little bit on the nose and a little bit, I don't know, corny at times, I would say. This one does a far better job of world building, I would say, and storytelling, okay? You're not just picking up audio logs and stuff like that anymore. You are actually interacting with NPCs, having conversations, instead of like interacting with, you know, a computer, and, you know, that was cool, having these different dialogue choices. Here, it's much more involved where you're talking to other NPCs, but don't expect the world to be, you know, brimming full of NPCs and stuff like that. There is a lot more interactive ability. Is that a word? I don't know. But there's a lot more going on here, and it does feel more like a fleshed out world, a much more story-driven experience, which I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about. It's a little bit more hand-holdy because the first game was a little bit frustrating at times, and I don't like hand-holding, but what I mean by this is because it's bigger and grander, you don't actually have to complete all the puzzles to finish the game, which is nice. That's what they've said on record. Also, you know, you have 12 much more bigger areas. It's not fully open world. That wouldn't really make any sense, but there are big open areas for you to explore and side puzzles this time, so you don't actually have to complete them all, and I'll talk about some of the other features in just a second. But I think it's important to actually touch on the themes of this game, because that's the only really interesting thing about this. Of course, the puzzles are good and they're much more fleshed out this time around. You know, there's more complexity to them, and there's gravity puzzles and stuff like that, which is cool. And, you know, this body swapping mechanic. Basically, they just built on the first game. Everything that people complained about in the first game, it's a lot more refined here, so there won't be so much annoyances towards the end game where the puzzles just get more and more difficult. So, you know, they have really done a good job at refining it. So like I said, it is pretty rare for games to deal with philosophical themes, and the first one dealt with, you know, like, what does it mean to be a human? For example, if you slowly get chipped away and have your body parts replaced, you know, and you become a cyborg, at what point do you actually become, you know, a robot and cease to be a human? Or for example, if we do build like a self, you know, conscious machine, and, you know, that has full sentience and consciousness, that can think for itself and has free will and all that kind of stuff, at what point does the consciousness of a object become different between consciousness of a human? And, you know, does it really matter if it's biological or digital? So with Nietzsche, it's all about the ego, I would say. You know, basically building the Übermensch, okay? You know, the idea of the best possible you that can be. It is very egocentric and ego-focused, I would say, and it fails on a lot of fundamental ideas, I would say. That's why I'm much more inclined towards Stoicism and living in accordance with nature and letting go of external values. That's what I'm trying to do with the kind of Roman philosophy that I'll talk about more in future videos as I build up this channel. And then also we have the more spiritual side of things with Buddhism and Taoism, which is more about letting life happen to you and going along with the flow. I would say that this type of philosophy is far more egoless, because at the end of the day we aren't actually who we think we are. We aren't actually these identities that we give ourselves. We are made up of, tiny little things, micro life, bone, blood, water. What we eat becomes, our mood and how we think. We are literally, everything. We are the universe, and we aren't this core identity of the ego. And Buddhism and Taoism is all about kind of going along with accepting that you are innately the universe. You are basically created from stardust, as Neil deGrasse Tyson would so lovely like to put it, because he basically jacks off over his own voice. But those are the three most popular philosophies, I would say, nowadays. Religion is dead, God is dead, and I think that's why humanity has kind of lost its way. And, it's just kind of very confused now. We're looking for God in all of the wrong places, and nihilism is very popular in today's society and generation, and that is why we live such a hedonistic lifestyle. But anyway, I'm getting off track. That's a whole separate video for another time. But the Talos Principle is interesting, and so is this game, because it builds on those themes of what does it mean to be human. And basically the fundamental idea is that, to become a free conscious being, okay, doesn't matter if you are built consciously, as a digital object, or you're a human, and the kind of idea of God creating humanity, and then humanity creating AI, and then kind of AI replicating humanity. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of, consciousness. And basically the whole point of consciousness, the reason that God made us, or the universe made us, it doesn't really matter how you phrase it, from chaos there has to be order, and for that to happen you have to have conflicts, you have to have reasoning and questioning, and if you don't have that, then basically you are just a slave. And the Talos Principle 1 was all about, kind of navigating that space of not creating a society of, mindless slaves. To create true consciousness, you need to have that fine line of questioning and opposites, For there to be sadness, there needs to be moments of happiness. For there to be anger, there needs to be peace. So the Talos Principle was all about questioning your reality, living inside of a simulation, and, basically reflecting the humanity consciousness to create this artificial society that then replicates itself into humanity, which is a very interesting idea, and I think that's why this first game was so special. And the second game basically deals with those themes, and it just, builds upon it more, but this time around it's basically focused about, living in this robotic society, this kind of AI consciousness society, and it deals with those themes of questioning reality itself and what it means for things to actually exist in this state, and, the identity of artificial intelligence, all that kind of stuff. And I just find that very fascinating. Not many games deal with it. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you like those themes, and if you want to hear more about philosophical ideas, make sure that you check out my playlist and that you do subscribe, because I will be covering more videos. But it's very rare for games to touch on that, and I think this does a good job of bringing in AI into the conversation as AI gets more and more integrated in our own real world. I think it's very important, because humans have this idea that we're somehow special, so it's very humbling in a way, and it's just a very cool setting. So all of this stuff is very interesting. The narrative, like I said, is far more focused compared to the first game this time around, because it's just much better with its storytelling. Before, like I said, it's audio logs, reading through notes, interacting through a computer, through kind of text. And what I loved about the first one is you had your ideas kind of challenged, because you could respond in different ways, like games like in Fallout New Vegas, for example. Optimism or nihilism would get questioned within the game. So that is very interesting. So with this Talos Principle 2 review, I want to clarify just basically the upgrades, because at the same time it is still very much the same game. The puzzles are kind of similar. They're still using kind of laser beams and all of this kind of stuff. They've added a few new things which I can't talk about, but fundamentally it is pretty much the same game. just the themes are more expanded upon. The graphics are of course a lot nicer, the areas are a lot bigger, there's more puzzles to do. So now let's get into the positives and the negatives, but I have to highlight just how the storytelling has become much better, and now you are actually interacting with these NPCs, having conversations with other, robots and stuff like that, and to me that's just far more engaging than just talking to a computer. So there's still a very strong theme of mystery surrounded in this game, and a giant place that you should not explore, kind of the Adam's apple, if you will. So a positive here is you can actually skip puzzles, okay? So if you get stuck on a puzzle, this isn't the only way to progress. You can actually skip them and come back to them later, which is nice because at times it does get repetitive. Also, there's a new traversal system in place here and some different types of puzzles, and I just feel like the balancing is far more better, where, like I said before, they would either be super easy, and then get a little bit more difficult, and then towards the end it's too difficult. Here it's far more ranged, and it just feels far better when it comes to the design approach to these puzzles. And also sometimes they would repeat puzzles to a degree in the first game, but here every single puzzle feels unique from what I've played so far, so I feel like that is reassuring. I feel like they did a far better job here with environmental storytelling as well, and it's not just all audio logs and stuff like that, which makes the world space feel much more believable, and it has this nice theme of, this kind of futuristic new world. So a negative here is, I would say, that the voice acting can still be a little bit rough at times, and I just wish they added a little bit more to the gameplay department, because yes, there are little choices that you can make, dialogue choices and stuff, but a puzzle game is all well and good, and it keeps things interesting, especially for people who love puzzle games. That's why you're interested in this Talos Principle 2 review, I assume. But at the same time, with puzzle games, okay, nowadays games are so massive and they have so many different ways of interacting with the player. And I just feel like solely focusing on puzzles is a little bit of a downer. Yes, there is some exploration here and, interacting with other NPCs and the story and some of the choices and stuff like that. That's what makes it interesting. But I'm not saying we need to do platforming or anything like that, or there needs to be some kind of, monster chasing you, because it's not that type of experience. But horror in video games is a great example, because usually it's not just relying on horror, otherwise that would get boring. Horror games are known for having puzzles in them, usually, because it breaks up the gameplay. And I just wish they added a little bit more something to the gameplay to keep it from feeling stale after a while. So in this new world, it's all about AI defying itself and its own creation, and all of that stuff is very interesting to me, and I think that's what this game does such a good job at. And it's very interesting sci-fi, okay, and if you're just a fan of sci-fi, then I would highly recommend the Talos Principle 2, but as a game, I still do think it's a little bit lacking. It's far better than the first one because it just feels much more polished. There's, like I said, new systems at play, like where you can swap bodies and not just have like a clone of yourself, because that wasn't a very good mechanic before. So there is new mechanics in place, and new traversal systems and kind of gravity and all that kind of stuff comes into play. And I'm sure there's more stuff that I haven't seen, because like I said, this is based on the early game. Really makes you question what reality is, and I'm sure Elon Musk would absolutely love this if he has time to jack off and play video games. So that is the Talos Principle 2 game review. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed some of the themes discussed here. Interesting. And as a game, I think this is very interesting. I've only had a look at it as a, early game, so I can't say that, it won't get more interesting with the gameplay aspects, but from what I've seen, it does seem like it is playing it safe to a degree, and it is very similar with the first one, but it is much improved for audio design, all that kind of stuff. I do like the option as well to play in third person, and it still has this mystery element of discovering, what's going on in this island, and almost this kind of detective gameplay where you have to piece together what's going on. So it's really, a fun game if all of this stuff appeals to you. If none of this appeals to you and you just want a game where you just go and explore and shoot stuff and collect loot, of course this is not the game for you. So just bear that in mind. It's not going to be for everyone. So I do hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you do subscribe and check out my synth music on Spotify. I would very much appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace out.